Ezekiel 17, 1 through 24. Devotional focus verse. Son of man, put forth a riddle, and speak a parable unto the house of Israel, and say, Thus saith the Lord God, a great eagle with great wings, long-winged, full of feathers, which had divers colors, came unto Lebanon, and took the highest branch of the cedar. Ezekiel 17, 2 through 3. Today's technology makes it possible for people around the world to enjoy many distant sights through webcams. On one such cam, viewers can observe an eagle nest near Decorah, Iowa, and learn a great deal about this fierce and fascinating bird by watching activities in and around the nest. The eagles nesting in Iowa are bald eagles, one species among many large birds of prey that make up the Accipitridae family. Hawks, kites, and vultures are also in this group. Bald eagles boast a wingspan of up to 8 feet, making them among the biggest birds on Earth. Due to their size and power, these predators are at the top of the avian food chain, sometimes feeding on animals as large as monkeys and sloths. Their amazing eyesight allows them to detect prey up to 2 miles away, and their hunting method involves surprising and overwhelming their next meal on the ground or the surface of the water. In today's text, Ezekiel was told to give an allegory concerning eagles to the house of Israel. The imagery would have been a familiar one to the people, as the eagle was used as a symbol of war and imperial power by many ancient civilizations, including the Egyptians, Hittites, and Babylonians. Given the eagle's intense glare, killer claws, and impressive wingspan, it is not surprising that it was widely regarded as the king of birds, similar to the lion's designation as the king of beasts. While a lion typically represented a kingdom, however, the eagle symbolized a whole empire. Roman legions going into battle carried standards with eagles at the top, and that eagle symbolized the legion's heart and soul. To lose the eagle meant the end of the legion, at least until the eagle emblem could be recaptured. Ezekiel's prophetic allegory was to be both a riddle, in which a deeper meaning underlies the figurative form, and a parable, in which the illustration teaches a spiritual truth. The 2 eagles in the allegory represented 2 world superpowers, Babylon and Egypt. Ezekiel explained that God would bring severe judgment on King Zedekiah because he had not honored the covenant he had made with Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Despite whatever assurances the Egyptian pharaoh gave to Zedekiah, he and his armies would be of no help at all to Judah against the Babylonians. That alliance had been prohibited by God, and as a result, Zedekiah's fate was sealed and Judah would be conquered completely. However, Ezekiel's prophecy ended in hope. In the concluding verses of our text, God promised that he was not finished with Israel. After the failure of the 2 great eagles to establish the nation of Israel under their powerful supervision, God promised that one day he himself would plant the nation in the mountain of the height of Israel. There it would grow and thrive, offering protection to all nations. We know that day is coming during the millennial kingdom of Christ. Then all who come to the Messiah will find peace and safety. That wonderful hope, first expressed to the captive people of Judah, can be ours as well. Background information. In chapter 17, God once again referred to the kingdom and tribe of Judah as the house of Israel as a whole. While the previous chapter had focused on the nation's spiritual and moral failure, in chapter 17 the prophet addressed her political folly. Ezekiel presented a prophetic parable, see verses 1 through 10, and explained it, see verses 11 through 21. He also prophesied the restoration of the Davidic line through the coming kingdom of Christ, see verses 22 through 24. Ezekiel's riddle was a prophetic warning relayed through symbolism. The great eagle was Nebuchadnezzar, pictured as a mighty bird of prey. Great wings symbolized Babylon's extensive reach throughout the land. Diverse colors referenced the diversity of people, languages, and cultures that made up the Babylonian Empire. Lebanon referred to Jerusalem, where the royal palace was richly decorated with Lebanese cedar wood. The highest branch of the cedar, in verse 3, was a reference to Jehoiakim, a descendant of the royal house of David who had reigned briefly in Judah but had already been taken into Babylonian captivity. The land of traffic and city of merchants of verse 4 symbolized Babylon. The seed of the land referred to Zedekiah, whom Nebuchadnezzar appointed or planted as puppet king of Judah in Jehoiakim's place. God's intention was that the vine, Israel, would flourish under the protection of Babylon. The phrases of low stature and turned toward in verse 6 referred to Israel's subjection to and dependency on Nebuchadnezzar. The second eagle, described in verse 7, also had large wings, depicting another powerful empire. This bird represented Pharaoh Hophra of Egypt. The vine preferred the second eagle, so its roots and branches began to grow in that direction. In verse 9, the question, "Shall it prosper?" was rhetorical and referred to Zedekiah's breaking of his oath of loyalty to Nebuchadnezzar when he began plotting with Egypt. The second question, "Shall he not pull up the roots thereof?" referred to Nebuchadnezzar's dethroning Zedekiah. In verse 12, the king who was taken to Babylon was Jehoiakim, who had been carried captive to Babylon with his princes several years earlier. Nebuchadnezzar took Jehoiakim's paternal uncle Zedekiah from Jehoiakim's family, the king's seed, and set him up as king of Judah in Jehoiakim's place. Zedekiah swore allegiance to Nebuchadnezzar and initially served him. According to verse 14, God's purpose, which had been revealed to Zedekiah by Jeremiah, was to humble Judah and to preserve the people through their subjection to Babylon. See Jeremiah 32, 1 through 5, and 37. However, Zedekiah rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar's rule, and therefore against God's rule. He conspired with Egypt to overthrow Nebuchadnezzar, but Egypt broke the agreement and did not come to defend Jerusalem. Given his hand in verse 18 referred to making a sworn covenant. In verse 19, the Lord referenced mine oath because Nebuchadnezzar required Zedekiah to swear in the name of Jehovah. Similarly, he alluded to my covenant because Israel's subjection to Babylon was his decreed will, as Zedekiah was aware. Although Zedekiah would forfeit his sovereignty because of his breach of faith, God would not let the line of David be forever destroyed. Verses 22 through 24 are widely considered to prophesy the earthly establishment of the Messiah. The use of "I" emphasizes that God alone will fulfill this prophecy, rather than working through an intermediary such as Nebuchadnezzar. The high cedar of verse 22 is a reference to the royal house of David, and the tender twig that Jehovah breaks off and plants is the Messiah himself. The high and eminent mountain is Jerusalem, where the Messiah will reign, and his kingdom will become a shelter for all who come to him. Conclusion. Though the children of Israel failed God and looked to other nations for help, God will fulfill His promise to establish a kingdom under the Messiah that will grow and become a shelter for all who come to Him.
Ezekiel chapter 17. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, put forth a riddle, and speak a parable unto the house of Israel. And say, Thus saith the Lord God, a great eagle with great wings, long-winged, full of feathers, which had divers colors, came unto Lebanon, and took the highest branch of the cedar. He cropped off the top of his young twigs, and carried it into a land of traffic, he set it in a city of merchants. He took also of the seed of the land, and planted it in a fruitful field, he placed it by great waters, and set it as a willow tree. And it grew, and became a spreading vine of low stature, whose branches turned toward him, and the roots thereof were under him, so it became a vine, and brought forth branches, and shot forth sprigs. There was also another great eagle with great wings and many feathers, and, behold, this vine did bend her roots toward him, and shot forth her branches toward him, that he might water it by the furrows of her plantation. It was planted in a good soil by great waters, that it might bring forth branches, and that it might bear fruit, that it might be a goodly vine. Say thou, Thus saith the Lord God, shall it prosper? Shall He not pull up the roots thereof, and cut off the fruit thereof, that it wither? It shall wither, and all the leaves of her spring, even without great power or many people to pluck it up by the roots thereof. Yea, behold, being planted, shall it prosper? Shall it not utterly wither, when the east wind toucheth it? It shall wither in the furrows where it grew. Moreover the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Say now to the rebellious house, Know ye not what these things mean? Tell them, Behold, the king of Babylon is come to Jerusalem, and hath taken the king thereof, and the princes thereof, and led them with him to Babylon. And hath taken of the king's seed, and made a covenant with him, and hath taken an oath of him, he hath also taken the mighty of the land. That the kingdom might be base, that it might not lift itself up, but that by keeping of his covenant it might stand. But he rebelled against him in sending his ambassadors into Egypt, that they might give him horses and much people. Shall he prosper? Shall he escape that doeth such things? Or shall he break the covenant, and be delivered? As I live, saith the Lord God, surely in the place where the king dwelleth that made him king, whose oath he despised, and whose covenant he brake, even with him in the midst of Babylon he shall die. Neither shall Pharaoh with his mighty army and great company make for him in the war, by casting up mounts, and building forts, to cut off many persons. Seeing he despised the oath by breaking the covenant, when, lo, he had given his hand, and hath done all these things, he shall not escape. Therefore thus saith the Lord God, As I live, surely mine oath that he hath despised, and my covenant that he hath broken, even it will I recompense upon his own head. And I will spread my net upon him, and he shall be taken in my snare, and I will bring him to Babylon, and will plead with him there for his trespass that he hath trespassed against me. And all his fugitives with all his bands shall fall by the sword, and they that remain shall be scattered toward all winds, and ye shall know that I the Lord have spoken it. Thus saith the Lord God, I will also take of the highest branch of the high cedar, and will set it, I will crop off from the top of his young twigs a tender one, and will plant it upon an high mountain and eminent. In the mountain of the height of Israel will I plant it, and it shall bring forth boughs, and bear fruit, and be a goodly cedar, and under it shall dwell all fowl of every wing, in the shadow of the branches thereof shall they dwell. And all the trees of the field shall know that I the Lord have brought down the high tree, have exalted the low tree, have dried up the green tree, and have made the dry tree to flourish, I the Lord have spoken and have done it.